Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I want to focus on the education about the 4 mature masculine archetypes illustrated by the Jungian, if I said that right, Jungian philosophy of the shadow and the shadow of human consciousness, particularly in the application of masculinity and the 4 different archetypes that show what a true embodied mature masculine psychology is, and what are the 4 shadow aspects of those each archetypes and how they play out in the active and the passive side. And these are not archetypes that are exclusive to or descriptive of who one person is. So for example, someone may be very much in the warrior archetype or in the magician archetype or the lover archetype or the king archetype at any one given point in time. But that doesn't mean that a person can necessarily choose to be just solely one archetype, and that is healthy. No, every man has these 4 archetypes as the blueprint of his psychology. And it is a fluid and dynamic expression of these archetypes. And the goal is to be balanced in all the fullness of these archetypes so that you meet the different challenges and circumstances of life with the demand of what archetype is needed in whatever combination is required in that moment to meet life where it is. And again, it's important to remember that everyone strives, at least we try to when we're conscious and intentional, to embody the fullness of these 4 archetypes without the shadows. But the shadows are always there, and they're always expressing to a certain degree. And so we're always being honest with ourselves and never being in this arrogance of saying or claiming that we are fully embodied and that there's no work to do. There's always work to be done. There's always improvements to be made. There's always higher levels of consciousness to seek and to strive for, and to refine, and to purify. And so, I'll be making a video dedicated to each of these archetypes and showing the shadow archetypes of each and how they express in their active and passive poles. But this video will be a sort of brief introduction and overview of the 4 archetypes. So, number 1, we have the overarching archetype, which is the king. And everyone knows and has a certain impression of what a king is. And let's start with the shadow archetypes of the king. So on the active side, we have a overcompensated king that is trying to force control and dominance. He is what you would say a tyrant, someone who bullies, abuses his power, is authoritarian, quick to anger, puts people down. An example of this would be Joffrey, King of Thrones, who is immaturely down, deep down feels very insecure and doesn't know how to rule. And so his default is to rule with an iron fist, to be a savage, to force everyone into submission because he doesn't feel safe with the power he has. He's a boy. He's not mature, and it's an overcompensation. And on the flip side, on the passive pole of the shadow archetype of the king, we have what you would call the weakling, a king who doesn't know how to even exert power, who feels insecure, who isn't decisive, doesn't meet the moment, who is passive, lazy, and just enjoys all the benefits of being a king and abuses that power with laziness, indulgence, debauchery. That's the weakling king. And now the fullness of the mature king, or you could say the king in his fullness, is the wise, benevolent steward that actively blesses others, sees the best in them, is calm in his emotions, deliberates, is productive, diplomatic, has a grand vision for his kingdom. He knows that he's the king to serve, and he knows that he has to be the highest and wisest leader in order to meet that demand. And he knows that he must be one with his people. He must mingle with his people. He must keep order and structure in his life and in his kingdom. And he must tend to his garden. He offers constructive criticism. He blesses others and sees the best in them and calls for their best selves and the greatness in others as he speaks to that in each and every one of the persons that he meets. Now, let's talk about the shadow archetypes of the warrior. The overactive warrior is the sadist, the warrior who takes pleasure in dominating and controlling others. Very similar to the Tyrant King, the sadist is quick to anger, feels that the only way to manage a situation is by brute force, and takes pleasure in overbearing and dominating his enemies. The world must be put into submission. There are only adversaries, and the only way to be happy is to conquer. And then we have the masochist, the warrior who punishes himself out of self-pity or a sense of weakness. He deeply feels insecure about who he is and believes he deserves to be punished, and so engages in self-deprecating talk, behavior, and addictions. The warrior in his fullness is the protective warrior, the warrior who finds within him and channels this aggression in order to protect and serve higher principles, higher virtues, whether that be his community, his family, love, society, humanity. He's able to control this energy of aggression and channel it when needed into serving and beneficial service and protection to those that he loves. So he uses his energy to protect rather than to destroy, to defend rather than conquer. And now the magician. The active pole of the shadow magician is the one who is the trickster, who uses wisdom in order to manipulate. He believes that he must control the world by getting the upper hand with knowledge and wisdom, and only gives what is needed in order to manipulate and control another. He is conniving, deceitful, and tells half-truths in order to achieve his goals, his self-serving goals. And then we have the passive magician, the one that gets too caught up in his head, too caught up in ideas, and never is able to embody the feeling of it and to actualize and to manifest those ideas. He's an overthinker. He falls back on hyper-analysis as a compensation for his lack of embodiment and ability to take what he has within him and bring it into the world with action. And now finally we have the lover. The overactive lover is the addicted lover, the one that is constantly seeking and chasing dopamine and pleasure in order to feel love. Because he is disconnected from the satisfaction within himself, he constantly seeks more and more sensations and pleasures to fill this huge gaping hole of emptiness within him. On the inverse side, the passive pole, we have the impotent lover, the one who is flat, doesn't get any enjoyment out of life, sees the world in gray, nothing excites him. His thoughts are, why bother? What's the point? He doesn't get any fulfillment in life because he is empty and because he can't channel up the enjoyment of the present moment, whether that be a pleasant cup of coffee, the beauty of nature. All of it is dull and blunted in his mind. And then we have the matureness of the lover, who doesn't chase pleasure and doesn't run from pain, but enjoys the sensations and the pleasures of a beautiful summer morning with a cup of coffee in his hand, or ravishing his woman when he's making love to her, or enjoying a beautiful sunset, or a drink of wine. He's able to embellish and relish these experiences without falling into the traps of addiction, because he is whole within himself. So he projects and brings that wholeness out into the various pleasurable sensations that he experiences, and feels gratitude and gives thanks to the Creator for these experiences without needing to hold on to them, because he is happy and whole within himself. And so, like I said, these four mature archetypes are what we strive for. And I invite you guys to ask yourself, in what ways are the shadow archetypes showing up in your experience and in your life? And in what ways are the mature archetypes showing up in your experience and your life? And I invite you actually to journal down and take note of the ways in which the shadow archetypes are expressing themselves, as well as the mature and embodied archetypes. And this will help you get a sense of where your blind spots are and where your strengths are, what you need to focus on, what archetypes you need to bring into balance, and what archetypes you need to perhaps dial down a bit in order to get this full coalition of the four mature archetypes to meet the demands of life in your day-to-day, whether that's with your family, your friends, your work, your career. And so it's a very interesting exercise to do this, and I hope you guys find value in it. And I hope you guys have come to realizations and exciting epiphanies about who you are and how you can evolve. Stay tuned for the next episode where I do a deep dive into the King. As always, I appreciate you guys for tuning into these videos. Please leave a comment if you feel that it has provided to you value, and let's talk about it. And let's talk about the archetypes. As always, I wish you guys the best. Have a great day. Sending you peace and love.